Book of Melchizedek. History of the Universe Part 1. The History of the Universe Chapter 1. Before there was a star to shine, before there were angels singing, there was a heaven, the home of the Eternal, the only Yah. In perfect wisdom, love, and glory, the Eternal lived an eternity before achieving his beautiful dream, the creation of the universe. The countless beings that comprised the creation were all conceived with great affection. From the inner atom to gigantic galaxies, all received his supreme regard. As a lover of music, Yahuwah conceived the universe as a grand orchestra so that under his rule it would vibrate with harmonious chords of justice and peace. For every creation, he composed a love song. Yahuwah was very happy because his dreams were about to be realized. Moving himself with majesty, he began his work of creation. His hands first shaped a world of light, and on it a mountain blazing, over which would forever be established the throne of the universe. The sacred mountain was named Zion, and at this base of the throne the Eternal did pour out a crystal clear river to represent that life from him would flow to all creatures. He then created a beautiful paradise that stretched for hundreds of miles around Mount Zion and called the paradise Eden. South of heaven, on both banks of the river of life, were built many mansions adorned with precious stones, which were intended for the angels, the ministers of the kingdom of light. Circling Eden and its angelic mansions, Yahuwah built a wall of jasper lampposts, along which could be seen large portals of pearls. With joy, the Eternal beheld the capital of which he had dreamed. The city in its splendor was adorned like a bride, ready to receive her husband. The great architect affectionately called it Jerusalem, City of Peace. Yahuwah was then to bring into existence the first rational creature. It would be a glorious angel, the most honorable of all. Adorned by the brilliance of gemstones, this angel would live on Mount Zion as the representative of the King of Kings to the universe. With much love, the Creator began to model the firstborn of the angels. All wisdom applied to form it, making it perfect. He tenderly granted him life, and the beautiful angel arose, like awaking from a deep sleep, and opened his eyes, and beheld the face of his Maker. With joy, the Eternal showed him the beauties of heaven, and told him of his plans, which were beginning to materialize. To be led to the place of his abode near the throne, the Prince of the Angels was grateful, and with melodious voice sang his first song of praise. From the heights of Zion, Jerusalem in its vastness and splendor unraveled itself in the eyes of the beautiful angel. The river of life that serenely glided through the city resembled a broad avenue, mirroring the beauty of the Garden of Eden and the angelic mansions. Involving the firstborn of the angels with his robe of light, the Eternal began to speak to him of the principles that were to govern the universal kingdom. Physical and moral laws should be respected to the fullest extent of the divine government. Moral laws would be summarized in two principles. Love Yahuwah above all things, and your neighbor like yourself. Every rational creature should be a channel through which the Eternal could well have another life and light. Thus, the universe would grow in harmony, happiness, and peace. In the kingdom of Yahuwah, the laws would not be enforced with rigor. The subjects were free. Obedience should arise spontaneously in a gesture of appreciation and gratitude. In this realm of freedom, disobedience would also be possible. The result of such behavior would be the depletion of vital forces. After revealing to the beautiful angel the laws of his government, the Eternal entrusted him with a mission of great responsibility, to be the protector of those laws, and that he should honor them and reveal them to the universe that was about to be created. With a heart overflowing with love for Yahuwah, this angel would be a model of perfection. He was Lucifer, the light bearer. The Prince of Angels, grateful for everything, prostrated himself before the loving king, promising him eternal fidelity. Yahuwah continued his work of creation, bringing into existence innumerable hosts of angels, the ministers of the kingdom of light. The holy city was populated by these radiant, happy and grateful creatures who united their voices in beautiful songs of praise to the Creator. Yahuwah now brought into existence the universe which, full of life, would be around his throne by his order. A thunder echoed by all parties gave rise, as if by magic, to countless galaxies filled with worlds and suns, havens of life and joy, all harmoniously turning around Mount Zion. When witnessing such a great achievement of the Supreme King, the angelic hosts fell down, illuminated by a song of triumph that echoed through space in a salute to life. The whole universe joined this song of gratitude with the promise of eternal fidelity to the Creator. Guided by the Eternal, the angels came to know the riches of the universe. In this tour, they marveled before the vastness of the kingdom of light. They met worlds inhabited by happy creatures who received them. The freedom of choice, through which the creatures could demonstrate their love for the Creator, was as precious as life, and it demanded a test of loyalty. In order to reveal it, the Eternal led the hosts through space and approached an abyss of darkness that contrasted with the immense brightness of the galaxies. By far this gulf had proved insignificant in the eyes of angels as a blip without light, but as they came closer, it was shown in its enormity. The Creator, who revealed to the angels every step of the mysteries of his kingdom, stood there silent, as if guarding a secret to himself. The darkness of that abyss represented the test of fidelity. Turning to the hosts, the Eternal solemnly said, "All the treasures of light will be open to your notice except for the secrets hidden by darkness. You are free to serve me or not. Loving the light, you will be connected to the source of life." With these words, Yahuwah made clear the difference between light and darkness, good and evil. The universe was free to choose its destiny. The long-cherished dream of the Creator became a reality. Now, as a loving Father, he led his creatures through an eternity of peace and harmony. Due to compliance with the laws of Yahuwah, the universe was expanding into happiness and glory. There was a strong bond of love, which strongly united all. Rational beings, endowed with the capacity of an infinite development, found unspeakable pleasure in learning the inexhaustible treasures of divine wisdom and sharing them with others. They were as channels through which the source of eternal life harbored all love and light. In Jerusalem, the ministers of the kingdom gathered before the sovereign king, always ready to fulfill his purpose. Lucifer was the one through whom the Eternal made manifest his designs. After receiving a new revelation, he promptly conveyed it to the angelic hosts. These, in turn, shared it with all creation. Angels would swiftly fly to the capital of the planets, where, in large assemblies, gathered representatives of other worlds. In many of these assemblies, Lucifer was present and filled the participants with joy and admiration. Perfect in all virtues, he captivated others with his sympathy. No other angel could reveal like him the mysteries of eternal love. The universe, fed by the fountain of life, was expanding in an eternity of perfect peace. Obedience to divine law was the foundation of all progress and happiness. While mindful of free will, it never climbed to the heart of any creature the desire to move away from the Creator. So it was for a long time, until a problem erupted in the life of the one who was closest to the Eternal. Lucifer, who devoted his life to understanding the mysteries of light, was gradually drawn to the darkness. The King of the universe, in whose eyes nothing can be hidden, sadly observed his footsteps descending the path that leads to death. At first, a little curiosity led Lucifer to approach that deep abyss. Contemplating it, he began to wonder why he could not understand its complexity. Returning to his place of honor beside the throne, he bowed himself before the divine king, beseeching him, "Father, give me to know the secrets of darkness as I reveal the light." Before the request of the beautiful angel, the Eternal, in an expressive voice with sadness said, "My son, you were raised to the light that is life." Convinced that the Creator would not reveal the treasures of darkness, Lucifer decided to understand the puzzle by himself. He thought himself able to do so. With this sad decision, the Prince of Angels allowed to arise in his heart a stain of sin that would bring catastrophe to the universe. Only Yahuwah knew what was in the heart of Lucifer. The angel who was created to be the bearer of light was divorced in thoughts of the beneficent Creator who, in an effort to prevent the disaster, besought him to stay with him. A tremendous fight began to catch up in his heart. The desire to know the meaning of darkness was immense. However, that loving father pleaded with him because he did not want to be a part of it. He did not want to lose the tortured soul. Seeing the suffering his attitude caused the Creator, Lucifer sometimes showed repentance, but soon returned to fall. Before creating the universe, Yahuwah had already foreseen the possibility of a rebellion. The risk of granting freedom to creatures was immense, but without this gift, life would be meaningless. Yahuwah did not want to rule over robots, programmed to only do his will. He wanted obedience that was the result of recognition and love, so he decided to take the big risk. While Lucifer desired to continue the search of the meaning of darkness, he did not intend to leave the light. He strove to achieve a combination of good and evil, hoping that in the realm of the eternal they could coexist separately. Finally, with a feeling of elation, he devised a deceptive theory that aimed to present to the universe a new system of government that was different than the rule of the eternal. He called his theory the knowledge of good and evil. Structured with logic, the science of good and evil proved attractive to Lucifer, who hoped it would unveil a sense of life superior to that offered by the Creator, whose kingdom enabled only experimental knowledge of good. In the new system, there would be a balance between good and evil, between love and selfishness, between light and darkness. Throughout the time that the knowledge of good and evil had matured in his mind, Lucifer knew to keep it secret from the universe. He remained at his post of honor, fulfilling the function of the light-bearer. However, for how much he tried to pretend, his face no longer showed joy in serving the eternal. The divine king, who suffered in silence, hoped to prepare the rational creatures through his revelations of love for the big event approaching. He knew that many would hearken to temptation, turning their back on him. Through the night of the ordeal, however, the true believers would stand, those who served the Creator not by interest but by love. Seeing that the test time had come and that Lucifer was ready to betray him before the universe, the Eternal, who had never before ceased to reveal the treasures of his wisdom, became quiet and contemplative. The silence did revive the heart of the hosts of the memory of that first outing, when, after showing them the riches of the kingdom of light, Yahuwah became silent before the abyss of darkness. They remembered his words, "All the treasures of light will be open to your notice, except for the secrets hidden by darkness. You are free to serve me or not. Loving the light, you will be connected to the source of life." Lucifer, who had come to covet the throne of Yahuwah, asked him why he was silent. The Creator, staring at him with infinite sadness, said, "The hour of darkness has come. You are free to achieve your purposes." Seeing that the moment for the propagation of his theory had arrived, Lucifer summoned them for a special meeting. The hosts, eager to know the meaning of the silence of the Father, took their places near the magnificent angel who had always revealed to them the treasures of the kingdom of light. Lucifer began his speech, extolling, as usual, the government of the Eternal. In a large retrospective, he reminded them of the great revelations that had enriched them through eternity. He explained that the silent celestial was an indication that the universe had reached the fullness of knowledge from the light. The eternal silence then opened the way for the understanding of mysteries not yet probed, hitherto kept beyond the limits of his government. Surprised, the hosts heard of Lucifer's experience and knowledge of darkness. With eloquence, he spoke to them of the knowledge of good and evil, and showed them how it was the path to the greatest achievements. The effect of his words soon made itself felt throughout the universe. The question was decisive and explosive, generating the first contention. Rational beings, without evidence, had to choose to stay only with the knowledge of light, which Lucifer claimed had reached its limits, or to venture into the knowledge of good and evil. Initially, the angels struggled with the matter, and soon after the entire universe was challenged. It appeared that the knowledge of good and evil would garner most of the creatures, but gradually many who initially became excited by that theory awakened to the illusion of it and reaffirmed their allegiance to the kingdom of light. At the end of that conflict, which dragged on for a long time, a third of the stars from the sky aligned with Lucifer, and the remaining still shaken by that evidence, beside the Eternal. The knowledge of good and evil was trumpeted by Lucifer as a new system of government. But how would they exercise it if the Eternal still reigned in Zion? They needed to find a way to push him away. The council formed by the rebellious angels decided to finally ask him for the throne for a certain time, in which they could demonstrate the excellence of the new system of government. If the universe were improved, the new system would be established forever. Otherwise, it would return the domain to the Creator. So it was that Lucifer, accompanied by his hosts, arrogantly approached the suffering Father and asked him their request. The Eternal was not ambitious, he just wanted good for his creatures. If the knowledge of good and evil actually consisted in a greater good, he would not oppose its implementation and would give the throne to his offenders. But he knew the path would lead to unhappiness and death. Moved by his protective love, the Creator denied the request of the rebel hosts, which turned away angry. Denied the throne, Lucifer and his hosts began to accuse the divine king, claiming his government was one of tyranny. They claimed that his decision to stay on the throne to be the clearest demonstration of his arbitrariness. Hadn't he granted them freedom of choice? But now he had neutralized it, preventing them from putting in place a better system of government. The charges of the rebel hosts reverberated throughout the universe, making it appear that the government of the Eternal was unfair. This brought deep distress to those who remained faithful to the kingdom of light. Not knowing how to refute such accusations, these creatures, muted by the moral pain, longed for the time when new revelations coming from the Creator could clarify to them the mysteries of this great conflict. Accusations of blasphemy and from the rebel hosts reached the climax when the Eternal, in a surprising gesture, rose from his throne as if he were ready to leave it. The infidels, in anticipation of their desired achievement, quieted down while a sense of awe in the hearts of his loyal subjects were penetrated with light. Would Yahuwah give up the domain of all creation because of these vile allegations? According to the logic from which Lucifer grounded his teachings, there was no other option left to the Creator. With tremendous expectation, the universe followed in the footsteps of Yahuwah. In a gesture of humility, the Creator divested himself of his crown and his royal robe, deposing them on the targeted throne. In his countenance there was not an expression of resentment or anger, but of infinite love and sadness. Solemnly, Yahuwah proclaimed that the decisive moment had come when every creature should seal his decision to the side of light or darkness. A widespread revelation warned of the consequences of a break with the source of life. With the look of tenderness, the Creator contemplated his children. It was a look of humility, full of love, begging them to stay at his side. Countless creatures, excited, corresponded to his kindly look, while a crowd stood apart, crestfallen. Lucifer and his followers were aware of the seriousness of the moment. It was still possible to go back on their plans and submit to the forgiving Heavenly Father who always loved them. While they dejectedly considered this final decision, Lucifer and his followers heard the song of those who, in recognition and gratitude, placed themselves beside the Eternal. The last battle was fought in the hearts of the dissenters. Yahuwah, in yearning contemplation of his rebellious children, raised his voice in a painful lament. My children, now I cannot call you that. I wanted so much to have you in my arms. I remember when I created you with care. You appeared happy and perfect in chords of hope in eternal harmony. I lived for you, covering you with glory and power. You were my joy. Why have your hearts changed so much? What else could I have done to make you stay with me? Now my soul bleeds in pain for this eternal separation. How will I look at the empty seats where so often you raised your voices in jubilant, festive hosannas without there coming to my mind a mix of happiness and pain? Infinite longing invades my being, and I know it will be eternal. Today my heart broke and broke up. I will bear the scars forever. After proclaiming this in tears of painful mourning, the Eternal, addressing himself to Lucifer, the cause of all this evil, said, You received a name of honor when you were created. Now you will no longer be called Lucifer, but Satan, the enemy of the Creator and his laws. After lamenting the destruction of the rebel armies, the Eternal, in slow steps, went into the Garden of Eden, leaving the place of the universal throne. Where would his dwelling place be now? The hosts of the faithful accompanied his reverent steps of mysterious abandonment, unveiling a future that seemed difficult, full of suffering and humiliation. Would the rebels occupy the divine throne, desecrating it as the dominion of sin? This quest tortured the heart of the eternal subjects. Leaving his beloved city, the Eternal himself led the glories of the universe toward the great gulf of darkness, about which he had hitherto grown silent. There he stopped, once again muted, while he seemed to read in the darkness a future of great conflict. In the sadness and suffering expressed in the Eternal's countenance, the faithful could finally understand the meaning of that mysterious abyss. It consisted of a symbolic representation of the kingdom of rebellion. In the saddened face of Yahuwah, there finally manifested a glow that the faithful cheered. Raising his powerful arms against the darkness, he commanded loudly, Let there be light. Immediately, the light of his presence filled the deep abyss, and triumphing over darkness, revealed an unfinished world covered by crystal clear waters. With this gesture, the Eternal began a great battle by claiming his government of light. It would be a battle of love against selfishness, of justice against injustice, of humility against pride, of freedom against slavery, of life against death. This battle without truce would last until at the desired dawn, the divine King could return victorious to the holy hill of Zion where, enthroned amid the praises of the redeemed, he would reign forever in perfect peace. The fleeing of darkness pointed to the final annihilation of the rebellion. Abundant waters covered that hitherto hidden world, which symbolized eternal life to the faithful that would be conquered by love that sacrifices everything. The world was revealed to be earth. Visited by the darkness and the light, it would be the scene of the great struggle. The faithful rejoiced in the triumph of light on that first day, when darkness suddenly rolled in his fury upon the planet, succumbing it to the thick darkness of night. The light, which seemed unsuccessful, was soon reborn victorious in a beautiful dawn. At dawn on the light of the second day, the Eternal commanded, "Let there be a firmament in the midst of the waters, and let it divide between water and water." Immediately the warmth of his light made an immense amount of steam to rise from the waters, enveloping the planet in a blanket of transparent indigo. Thus emerged the atmosphere, with its perfect blend of gases that would be essential to life that soon would crown the planet. The Creator, contemplating the expansion, called it heaven. The atmosphere, full of a glow that enveloped the earth, was then shadowed up by the twilight of another evening. The history of the universe, chapter 3, to overcome darkness on the third day. The Creator continued his work, giving rise to the immense continents which were still under the surface of the waters. With hands raised, he commanded, "Gather up the waters under the heavens in one place, and the dry land appear." In prompt obedience, the crystal clear waters ceded its higher position to the rising dry ground, which overlapped them. In the lower regions of the earth, the waters continued reflecting the sky's glow to serve as a refreshment to thirsty creatures. In this gesture of humility, the water prefigured the Creator and the great struggle of his descent to the deepest abyss to revive thirsty souls in eternal life. Contemplating the face of that new world, Yahuwah called the dry ground land, and the gathered waters he called seas. With his powerful voice he continued commanding, "The earth will bring forth grass, the herb yielding seed, and the fruit tree yielding fruit after his kind, whose seed is in itself upon the earth." In obedience to the divine command, the solid surface of the planet took on all kinds of vegetation. Beautiful meadows to bloom, green fields interspersed with crystalline rivers, endless forests where leafy trees blossomed into endless flavorful species of fruit. The earth was like a canvas where the Creator, through the power of his word, made masterpieces of peerless beauty. While the hosts beheld with awe the beauty of that creation, they were surprised to recognize on the new planet the Garden of Eden, the home of Yahuwah's throne. Yahuwah, by the power of his word, had transferred it to the bosom of that special world, where justice would be confirmed in the government of the universe. On that spring day, the breeze gently caressed the green woods and meadows in bloom, flooding the atmosphere with soft aroma and freshness. Contemplating his work, the Creator happily exclaimed, "Behold, all that is very good." The lush planet fulfilled another day of its harmonious rotation. The faithful hosts could now better understand the importance of divine light. Its absence was overshadowed by the evening. In the new day, the Creator expressed his great power, giving the earth lights that fill with light and heat to display the beauty of Zion. These lights remain forever as symbols of the spiritual presence of the Eternal, which is the source of all light. Contemplating the dark and empty space that stretched around the earth, with a strong voice he commanded, "Let there be lights in the firmament of the heaven to divide the day from the night, to be for signs and for seasons and for days and years. And let them be for lights in the firmament of the heaven to give light upon the earth." Immediately the space came forth by the glare of the sun and the reflection of planets and celestial bodies. Given this demonstration of power, the faithful hosts bowed in reverent worship. On the fourth day, the Eternal created the worlds of the solar system not to be inhabited like the earth, but for the balance of the system, and also to fill the sky with glowing light to diminish the darkness of earthly nights. Observing the earth, the hosts were glad to see her radiant. Raising his powerful hands, the Creator, looking primarily for crystal clear waters, commanded, "Let the waters bring forth abundantly the living soul." Immediately the waters became undulated by the presence of countless species of creatures, happy and grateful, celebrating their existence with a continuous swim and frolic. From microscopic beings to large whales, all appeared in complete harmony, reflecting in their nature their love of the Creator. His eyes alighting on the atmosphere and resting on the green forests, the Eternal continued, "Let birds fly on the face of the expanse of the heavens." Upon his order, the heavens were filled with colorful birds flying in all directions, carrying in their hearts a song of gratitude for life. This song filled the air, mingling with the scent of flowering bushes. Gazing with delight on his earthly creatures, the Eternal blessed them, saying, "Be fruitful and multiply and fill the waters in the seas, and let fowl multiply in the earth." Jubilant, the faithful hosts witnessed the dawn of the sixth day. What would Yahuwah do in this new day? This question lingered in the minds of all rational beings. They were certain that something very special was about to happen. Raising his powerful arms, the Eternal commanded, "Produce on earth every living creature according to its kind, cattle, creeping things and beasts of the earth according to its kind." His powerful voice was heard, and promptly in forests and fields we could see the results of his creative power. Animals of all species awoke to a happy life amid a paradise of perfect peace. The earth had become extremely beautiful, like a princess adorned to receive their king and lord. Who would receive that special creation? Moving himself with majesty, the Eternal fell to the glories of the new world, directing himself to the Garden of Eden, the place of the divine throne. The angels of light accompanied him reverently, pausing like a cloud over the skies of paradise. The whole universe watched with deep interest the unfolding acts of the Creator in response to the accusations of his enemies. The moment was decisive. Everything indicated that the Eternal would not be tyrannical or selfish and would crown someone else over the hill Zion. Satan and his followers did not doubt that they would be given the kingdom and reign victorious within that ancient abyss where darkness and light were now intertwined. The subjects of light quivered against this perspective. Near the source of the river of life, the Eternal solemnly bowed down and with the natural elements of earth began to mold, with great affection, a special creature. After a few moments, the first man, yet lifeless, was lying on the body of the Creator. Yahuwah looked at him, and after caressing his cheek pale and cold, breathed into his nostrils the breath of life, and man began to live. As if awakening from a deep sleep, the man opened his eyes and looked at the sweet face of his Creator who, smiling, kissed his cheek now flushed and full of life. Thrilled to hear the Eternal say to him softly and full of affection, "My son, my dear son," because he was born of the soil, the first man was named Adam. Taking him by the hand, the Eternal raised him. Without regard of the glow that surrounded the Creator, Adam, in gratitude for his existence, involved him in a tender embrace, falling down in reverent worship. The witnessing hosts of the faithful admired Adam's great divine realization and, excited by that human gesture, fell also in reverent worship. They then joined voices in a song of joy in greeting to that special creature who awoke to life at a moment so critical to the universe. With a heart full of happiness, Adam joined the angels in their song of praise. His voice echoing around the flowers mingled with the singing of the birds and the lowing of the approaching admiring animals. He climbed up the lofty trees that swayed in the breeze with branches hanging with abundant flowers and fruits. Leaning here and there, he was attracted by the glow of precious stones that adorned the lawn. With intense joy, Adam took notice of the submissive and lived in perfect harmony and happiness. Pausing in his footsteps, Adam wondered at the whiteness and sweetness of an animal that was playing on the lawn. He came and took him in his arms, dedicating special affection to it. How nice it was to stroke its wool. His little eyes reflected a gentle glow of love and humility. There was something special about that animal. Sincerely, Adam called it Lamb. With the lamb in his arms, Adam looked gratefully to the Eternal and worshipped him. Contemplating his robes and his expressive eyes of a matchless love, Adam discovered that he had in his arms a symbol of its author. Happy, Adam exclaimed, "O Yahuwah, this lamb coated with white wool with an expressive look of so much love looks like you. I want to always have it with me." Observing the animals, Adam realized that they enjoyed a special camaraderie. Everywhere were happy couples who lived for each other. His thoughts turned to his partner. He looked around and was surprised not to see one. He wondered if Yahuwah had purposely concealed them by making them invisible. Adam felt lonely in the midst of this paradise. Who would share his happiness and love? There were animals, but they were irrational and cannot share in their ideals. It was born in his heart, when walking alone that evening, a burning desire to find someone who could always be by his side. While Adam was looking at the distant hills in hope of seeing someone, Yahuwah introduced himself to his side and told him, "It is not good that man should be alone. Soon you'll have a companion." Adam was happy to hear this promise of the Creator, just when he longed to have someone to always be visible next to him. Taken by a deep sleep, Adam leaned back in the bosom of his loving Creator, who, embracing him, did fall asleep. In his subconscious were the first colored dreams. They included the sweet look of the Eternal, hearing the harmonious sound of angelic music, discovering the wonders all around, Mount Zion with its rainbow, the river of life, the meadows in bloom, the animals that greeted him. Adam's gaze extended over the grassy meadows and flowering hills in the distance. While hiking, hopefully, he could feel the gentle breeze stroking his soft hair. He began a conversation with the breeze. "Breeze, you seem to be the one I seek. You stroke my hair, kiss my face. You have the scent of green forests. If I could see your face, I would kiss you. If I could touch your hair, I would make long braids and grace it with flowers from our garden." After walking through the meadows, in his dream of paradise, Adam paused as he looked around the landscape. He marveled that he could not see the effect of the breeze in the flowering branches, even though he could feel it warmly on his face. He then began to awaken from his dream. Even with eyes closed, he remembered the moment. Sleepy, he leaned on the breast of the Eternal. Could it be a breeze stroking his hands? With this question, he opened his eyes and was thrilled to contemplate a beautiful woman with hands scented, stroking his cheek lovingly. It was the breath of his dream, the promise of a Creator who just wanted to make him happy. Now Adam was full as was Eve, who was flesh of his flesh and bone of his bone. Taking her by the hand, Adam invited her for a tour of unforgettable surprises. He would show his partner the beauties of his home. Eve touched something with every step. She was attracted to the flowers that gave off sweet perfumes, to the birds singing cheerful songs, and to the animals that followed them submissively. The vegetation grew around them in rich hues, and the clear waters of the river of life flowed cascading from the hill Zion. In paradise, everything was perfect and beautiful, but nothing matched the human being created in the image of Yahuwah. They turned to each other in awe and caresses. They remained in this loving embrace until sunset. With delight, the young couple began to contemplate the setting sun through pink rays which tinged the sky in a gorgeous afterglow. The sixth day came to its end, giving way to hours of a special day, Sabbath. That day, in meaning, would be solemn to all the subjects of the Eternal, since its dawn would bring victory to the kingdom of light. The sun, which during the sixth day brought joy to nature with its brightness and warmth, hid itself, leaving cold shadows. The cheerful birds, silencing their trills, sought their nests while the other animals retired to their beds. Only the couple remained motionless, looking at the last flicker in the fading horizon which gave the hope of a new dawn. The couple inquired to the meaning of the darkness when, through the branches, they saw a beautiful moonlight whose silvery rays bathed nature in soft light. The entire sky was lit by the glow of the stars. Adam found that the night was only darkness when he looked down. Adam and Eve, in their innocence, did not know that night symbolized the bleak future of humanity. When they understood, they would be comforted to contemplate the splendor of the heavens. The moonlight speaks of hope, and the twinkling stars testify of the interest of the hosts of light in them to enlighten the darkness and give encouragement to repentant sinners. But only those who desire to be enlightened, averting their eyes from the earth, would behold the heavens. After contemplating for a while the sky in its luminosity, the couple, remembering the beauty of paradise, turned their eyes to their surroundings. But they were hidden in the shadows. They longed for the dawn, because only it could bring back paradise. Before the yearning of the human heart, the Eternal appeared in the midst of darkness, returning to the couple the joy of meeting again in a colorful garden. Bathed in soft light, they now walked through green and flowery meadows. The brightness of the Creator awakened nature wherever they went, coloring and brightening all around. The couple, in admiration, learned that beside the Eternal they could have a paradise in the night. Feeling sleepy, Adam and Eve leaned back into the lap of the loving Father and began to sleep sweetly, hopeful of happy mornings. Laying them down on the soft grass, the Eternal rose up towards the contemplative hosts of heaven. He would manifest himself again at dawn, making the couple wake up to the most solemn event, which would reduce to dust the vile accusations of their enemies. The cold, dark night, through its long hours, seemed to mock the light. Would it forever overshadow the beauty of creation? Oh, never. The sun would not back down before the majesty of darkness and would soon emerge as a liberator, snatching nature with his warm rays from the cold claws of night, giving it life and color. In a final challenge, the darkness became dense in the hours before dawn. The night enlists its forces to fight for dominance usurped. Finally, in the east came a glimmer of hope that seemed to speak in a new day. The sky gradually became colored bright red. Darkness fell powerless before the growing strength of the light and was consumed on their trail. Nature began to awaken from the long night, reflecting on her breast the longing rays. Flowers opened, exhaling scents of joy. Animals and birds, silenced by the night, joined their voices in song in triumphant salute to the dawn of that great day. The dark night was over, giving way to the light of daydreaming, a day to Yahuwah which had special meaning because it prefigured the final victory of his kingdom on the field of rebellion. The Eternal now awoke his human children, who bathed by the light of his presence, having fallen asleep in the hope of a happy dawn. In a festive march, all holy hosts, with songs of victory, followed him into the paradise bathed with light. How soon will shine a cherished morning, bringing in its light the sweet paradise lost in the night. With joy, the couple welcomed the divine Creator, joining the angels in triumphal anthems. The universe lived a truly solemn moment. That festive morning, Yahuwah would reveal the greatness of his character, which is justice and love. Accusations that his government was selfish and tyrannical would be refuted. With the eyes of all rational creatures of the vast universe upon them, Yahuwah led the young couple to Mount Zion, the place of the divine throne. There, in the thrill of the muted hosts, the Creator, in a surprising gesture, covered the man with the royal mantle and put on his head the crown which was coveted by Lucifer. Driven by deep gratitude for this supreme honor conferred, Adam and Eve fell down reverently at the feet of the Creator, deposing his precious crown in a sign of submission. Following this human gesture, a shout of victory shook the whole of creation. The children of the light, which had so long suffered indignities and humiliations before the constant accusations of rebel armies, praised Yahuwah in resounding blessed praise that in his work of righteousness he denied the enemies, revealing his character of humility, selflessness, and love. Having made man as the Lord of all creation, the Eternal, in a solemn voice, began to make him aware of the greatness of his mission. As a faithful steward, he should take care of paradise, keeping clear the source of the river of life. The laws of justice and love, fundamentals of the kingdom of light, should be honored. As a rational ruler, it would be the man, in a gesture of appreciation and gratitude, who would freely accept this government from him who created him. The hosts, who were amazed witnessing the revelation of divine detachment, realized that the Eternal of Light would not rule over the universe except with the consent of the human. The man, by the will of the Eternal, was made the arbiter of creation. In his glorious being, made in the image of the Creator, shone the seal of eternal dominion. After revealing to the couple the infinite honor and responsibility of their mission, the Creator made them aware of the spiritual warfare that had been waged for conquest of universal dominion. Lucifer, who for countless ages served the heavenly King in Zion, had been corrupted by pride and by selfishness, followed by a third of the rational hosts, now sought to dethrone the Eternal, dishonoring him with vile accusations. Having revealed to man the painful situation in which the universe was in, the Eternal, in a solemn gesture, showed him two towering trees, laden with great fruit, rising on both banks of the river that was born from the throne. The rising tree on the right of the Eternal revealed to be the tree of life, a monument of the kingdom of light. The rising tree on the other proved to be the tree of knowledge of good and evil, the symbol of rebellion. Eating the fruit of the tree of life, the man would manifest his submission to the Creator, who is the source of life and light. Eating of the other tree would give the enemy the field of Zion. The inevitable result of this step would be eternal death, not only for humans but for all creation, which would reduce to chaos under the fury of rebellion. After contemplating at length the two lofty trees, which bear fruit externalized as infinite responsibility, Adam bowed himself to the Creator, saying, "You are worthy, Yahuwah, to reign over the universe, because by thy wisdom, love, and power, all things were created and remain." That Sabbath day, the divine emblem of triumph, filled with praise. All children of light joined the human being in the most harmonious hymn of praise to him whose greatness is peerless. Satan and his followers were astonished witnessing the great achievement of the Eternal. They bitterly witnessed the joy of the faithful before the coronation of man, an event that cast to the ground their strong objections raised against the divine government. Filled with frustration and anger, they now considered their plight. How terrible and humiliating to them was the thought of seeing their plans of rebellion divest themselves before the Creator, like the shadows of the night. If they could, they thought, they would fill the Sabbath darkness, banishing from the mind of the eternal subjects any hope of victory. Finally, in his remarks, Satan and his followers realized they had one opportunity remaining. In the middle of the Garden of Eden, on the heights of Zion, lifted up by the river of life, was the tree of knowledge of good and evil. It would only take one human gesture, nothing more, and Satan would have under his power, forever, the coveted domain. But how to seduce him? Excited at the prospect of a victory, Satan sought, with ingenuity, to devise a plan of approach. He knew that if he failed in his attempt, all hopes of victory would be diluted, scrapping all his dreams of conquest. He concluded that cheating would be a powerful weapon. Had it not been he who managed to 1/3 of the heavenly hosts, he would await, therefore, a propitious time to set his snare. In Eden hung the sweet calm of perfect peace. Everywhere the lovely birds were heard singing their happy trills in constant praise to the Creator. All nature seemed to blossom and proclaim the kingdom of eternal joy. The animals in union played everywhere, always submissive to the man, the lord of that lovely paradise. Everything was happiness for the couple, but this became more intense in the cool of those spring days. The afterglow, which with its beauty tinged the sky, foreshadowing the dark nights, advertised them also the time of the daily visit of the Eternal. Together, under the light of his presence, a long time passed in happy conversation. With encouragement, the couple told the Eternal the amazing wonders that they discovered each day in nature. Yahuwah fondly revealed to them the meaning of each being. How grateful were they for the beautiful lessons learned at his feet. With each passing day, the more they felt love, respect, and admiration for the great Creator. He was so good, bringing them to life and giving them a home so full of delights. When they awoke to the joys of each new day, there came to them the remembrance of the embrace and the sweet singing of the Eternal, which made them fall asleep every night. The life of Adam and Eve in Eden was not idle. To them it was recommended that they care for the garden. The occupation was not wearisome. On the contrary, it was pleasant and invigorating. The Creator indicated work as a source of benefits to humans, in order to occupy their mind and strengthen their body, developing all their faculties. In mental and physical activity, they found a high pleasure. It was also common to the young couple to receive visits from celestial beings. Visitors always had news to report and questions to ask. Adam and Eve spent a long time listening to them about the wonders of the kingdom of light. Through these visitors, Adam and Eve gained extensive knowledge of the Lucifer rebellion and its eternal consequences. Adam and Eve always begged the visitors to teach them how to join in the harmonious heavenly singing. They were delighted to join the choir of angelic voices. In his omniscience, Yahuwah knew the terrible enemy's intent. Calling his main hosts, he revealed to them the weight of the imminent danger that hung over the universe. Satan would set a trap in order to bring man to eat of the tree of knowledge of good and evil. Before this revelation, the children of light were afraid, for they knew the tremendous ease of Satan to ensnare innocent creatures and throw them into their meshes of death. In solemn council, they decided to urgently send messengers to warn man of the great danger. 2 powerful angels were in charge of this crucial mission. Immediately, the commissioned messengers stormed the gates of Jerusalem, reaching the bosom of infinite space. Within moments, they transposed wildernesses, crossing galaxies en route. They entered the tunnel of the constellation Orion, approaching the new system. They could now make out a short distance away the blue planet, where the fate of the universe was about to be decided. In Eden, all was relaxed. The young couple remained in their innocent activities, enjoying the pleasure of happy living. Absent from their mind was thinking of how, at that moment, all the children of light were tense, thinking of their future being threatened. They then saw in the clear sky the sign of the approaching celestial visitors, and they raised their arms in a cheerful greeting. Adam and Eve wondered, though, why they did not see in their faces the same joy. The visitors brought on their face an expression of longing that they could not understand. Adam and Eve tried to change their sad features, asking them of the new discoveries made in heaven. The messengers, however, not having time available as before, interrupted with words of warning. They told them that Satan would set them a trap in order to get them to eat from the tree of knowledge of good and evil. If they heeded the temptation, it would succumb all creation into an eternal abyss of chaos. The angels reminded them that the kingdom had been entrusted to them as a sacred trust, and that they shall, in a life of fidelity, honor the one who emptied himself for love, putting himself in a position of host to the humans. Adam and Eve should be firm against the insinuations of the enemy, as it would seal the victory for the eternal kingdom of light. They told them the happy reward that would follow this triumph. The angels revealed that the plan was for Yahuwah to then transfer the heavenly Jerusalem to earth. There, again, earth would forever remain coupled to paradise, and man, submissive to the Creator, would reign forever without end upon Mount Zion amid the universal praise of the hosts. But all this depended entirely on positioning the human face against the temptations of the enemy, who would do anything to snatch the kingdom. Adam and Eve were afraid to know the plans of Satan, but they were comforted to know he could not do them any harm, forcing them to eat the forbidden fruit. If perhaps he would seek to intimidate them with his power, all the hosts of the Eternal would come to their rescue. The messengers of the light completed their mission by recommending the couple remain vigilant, always bearing in mind the responsibility that rested upon them. They should not separate themselves from each other, not even for a moment, because on their own they could be swayed. Adam and Eve, thankful for the angels' warnings, joined their voices in a song of promise, in an eternal victory. They were sure they would never abandon the blessed Creator upon hearing the voice of the tempter. Excited at the human promise, the two messengers returned to the bosom of the heavenly Jerusalem, where, next to the holy hosts, they awaited with longing the heralded triumph. Satan saw the messengers of heaven approaching and heard the man singing, promising an eternal victory. This song made his envy and hatred increase so that he could not contain it. He then told his followers that soon he would silence that nagging voice, saying, "I'd do anything to transform human praise to the Creator into blasphemy." The hosts of rebels were curious to know the plans of their leader, but they were warned by him that they should wait until all decided to stay forever. If man would hearken to his voice and eat from the tree of knowledge of good and evil, they would be victorious, claiming forever the domain of the universe. If the man resisted, remaining faithful to the Creator, there was no longer any hope for them. Heaven seemed to be enveloped by an eternal security, but in the countenance of the man could be seen an expression of awe. Since the departure of the angels, Adam and Eve remained silent, meditating with reverence about the tremendous responsibility of their mission. They thought of the seriousness of the imminent moment that would seal his future and all of creation. Animated, however, at the thought of victory, they joined once more their voices in a song that expressed the certainty of heralded triumph. This melody banished from their minds all fear of defeat, and they cheerfully ran in the lush meadows, accompanied by spirited animals that seemed to celebrate the great achievement. They felt secure in their paradise, totally oblivious of the danger of a possible assault. Satan, who carefully watched the couple, realized now was his chance. He approached invisibly from heaven and was waiting for the best time to set his snare. Unaware of the presence of the enemy, the couple remained in their selfless joy, playing carelessly with the animals. In troubled countenance of Satan, there rose up a sneaky smile to witness a couple in carelessness. In their exultation, they had failed to meet the final recommendation of the messengers, which was to not move away from one another. The wily foe, not wasting time, took possession of the most beautiful serpent of paradise, gracefully moving it closer to Eve. Eve, seated on the lawn playing with the animals, realized the presence of the attractive snake, whose body reflected the colors of the rainbow. She was surprised to see the snake pick flowers and fruits from the garden, depositing them at her feet. Gratefully, she took the snake in her arms, devoting her affection. Having won the affection of the woman, Satan, in his cunning, began to draw her to the tree of knowledge of good and evil. Unaware of the danger, Eve followed the snake to the tree of testing. There, having the hidden enemy in her arms, she stroked it and told it of her endearments. Having in his eyes the brightness of seduction, the serpent began to speak. His words were full of wisdom and tenderness, and his voice like an angel. Eve could hardly believe her eyes. Her joy became immense to have a creature in her arms that was so fantastic. It began to talk of many things: love, the beauties of the garden, the power of the Creator. Eve was amazed at the vast knowledge of the serpent, who discoursed with mastery on any subject. Encircled by this experience, Eve completely forgot her companion, even forgetting the warning of the angels. Adam, who also entirely forgot the advice of the heavenly messengers, had moved away in the company of some animals. After some time, there came with a vengeance into his mind the memory of the warnings received. Ringing in his ears clearly were the last words uttered by the angels: "Do not turn away from one another, not even for a moment separate, as it is dangerous." His heartbeat quickened to not see Eve at his side. He then raised his voice to an anxious shout. His voice, echoing through the vaults of heaven, however, did not bring an answer. The silence almost choked him. In his grief, he began to run from one side to another, looking for her in vain. In this anxious search, he felt the breeze stroking his hair and recalled his first dream. That memory, however, broke down at the thought of the danger that threatened them. With mind taken by a great sense of guilt, Adam picked up the pace in distressing demand. Where was his loved one? Was there still time to involve her in his arms, freeing her from falling? Once again, he raised his voice in a shout that reverberated throughout the anxious garden. "Eve, where are you?" He waited for a response, but heard only an empty echo of despair. He remembered the tree of knowledge of good and evil, which was the one place where his companion could be deluded. Hoping to block the only chance of the enemy, he advanced towards the place of proving. His heart beat quickly, contemplating the distant prohibited treetop. With the snake in her arms, Eve questioned it about many things. She marveled to see that the serpent greatly surpassed other serpents. He then told a lie, saying he was a snake like the rest, eating the fruits of paradise. He tasted that forbidden fruit one day and received, as if by magic, all the virtues. Looking at the tree of knowledge of good and evil, Eve was surprised and confused. Would the Creator in his love deprive something so good to his creatures? Seeing her surprise, Satan asked, "Did not Yahuwah say that ye shall eat of every tree of the garden?" Eve, restless, replied, "Of the fruit of the trees of the garden we eat, but the fruit of that tree that you claim to be a source of wisdom, Yahuwah said, ye shall not eat of it, lest ye die." The serpent, in a tone of disdain, said, "This is false. If so, I would have died. Surely the Eternal forbade them to eat from that tree to prevent the man from becoming as he, knowing all things. The seductive words of the serpent caused confusion in the mind of Eve of who to trust. She had in mind the memory of the order of the Creator and his sentence, but at the same time she had before her a tangible proof that contradicted it. Stunned, she began to doubt the character of the Eternal. In a challenge, the serpent harvested fruit from the forbidden tree and started to eat it. Putting a fruit in the hands of women, he encouraged her to eat, saying, "Did not the Eternal say that if someone touched that fruit they would die?" A complete silence hung over the universe. In each inhabited planet, the children of light stared helplessly at the agonizing scene. Their future was that they must respect the free will granted to mankind, and that they would manifest their choice under the temptation of the enemy. The children of light suffered greatly when they saw the woman doubting him who so kindly gave them life and the chance to reign in that paradise. How could they doubt he who devoted so much love? Adam, a strong hope of securing a cherished victory, hastened like a race. He saw his beloved from afar, sitting by the tree of proving. What was Eve doing in that place so dangerous? A horrible feeling came upon him. He remembered once again the warnings received, but sought to banish it as he thought that he would reach his wife before something bad happened to her. Eve wavered in her conviction with the fruit in her hands. For a few moments the future seemed dark and terrifying to her, but she overcame this feeling by thinking of the glories she would gain by eating this fruit. Still somewhat undecided, she slowly raised her hands to touch the fruit to her lips. The subjects of the kingdom of light, shaken, fell down with astonishment. It seemed almost impossible at that point that the woman could come back. While the faithful pale inquired about a possible hope, they witnessed with horror the terrible decision that Eve took to break forever with the Creator, becoming captive to death. The Eternal, who gazed in silent pain at that scene of rebellion, bowed his forehead with his face bathed in tears. He could not bear the pain of separation. The faithful who panicked and thought themselves vanquished were aware that all was not lost. If Adam resisted the temptation and remained faithful to the Eternal, he would seal the big victory. Eve, who was the victim of a mistake, could be made aware of her mistake being favored with heavenly forgiveness. When Adam, in his agonizing race, reached the place of testing, it was too late. Seated next to the river, Eve tasted the forbidden fruit carelessly. Adam shuddered. Was it really the fruit of proving? In a gesture of hope, he looked at the tree of knowledge of good and evil, but tearfully acknowledged the sad conviction. Filled with grief, he beheld his wife, but found no words to awaken her to so bitter a reality. In complete desperation, he raised his voice in a painful exclamation. "Eve, Eve, what are you doing?" By eating the forbidden fruit, the woman was taken by emotions that led her to imagine she'd reached a higher sphere of life. Upon hearing the voice of her husband, and taken by these illusory emotions, she raised her brow with a smile, but was surprised to see him crying. With deep sorrow, he sought to know the reason that led her to rebel against the Eternal. Eve promptly began to tell him the story of the wise, fantastical serpent. Satan knew this snake story would never convince the man to eat of the forbidden tree. He needed to find a subtle way to get him to seal his fate in the footsteps of his wife. Having Eve under his power, he decided to make her the object of tempting, and would await the opportune moment to ensnare him. The memory of this sentence, "On the day you eat thereof, you shall surely die," made Adam very distressed. The expectation of seeing his beloved perishing in his arms was too much to bear. This distress, however, was decreasing to see that she was still happy and loving at his side, as if no harm had happened. Relieved, Adam smiled again, corresponding to the affections of his companion. He surrendered to the sweetest emotions, far from knowing that the enemy was involved in those hugs. In that moment of rapture, Eve began to tell him about her experience with the knowledge of good and evil. She told him of the treasures of wisdom that had been opened. In her new kingdom, she could live very happy. However, this happiness would be incomplete without the participation of her spouse. She told him of the impossibility of going back on her footsteps and urged him to follow. After talking to him of her decision, Eve, with a sweet smile, held out her hands containing a fruit and asked him to eat in demonstration of his love for her. With this tempting voice in his ears, Adam sat on the lawn in deep thought. His face became pale again, his hands trembling. He feared to rebel against the Creator, but at the same time he understood that he could not live apart from his companion, whom he loved with infinite love. Eve was flesh of his flesh, the extension of his being. He was distressed at having to make a decision so serious. The paleness of Adam's face was reflected on the faces of all the faithful to the Eternal. They had heard the suggestion of the enemy and realized with horror the vacillation of man. The indecision of Adam left them desperate. If he obeyed what Satan proposed, all happiness would be banished forever. Inhuman decisions was the fate of the entire universe. Would he answer the call of Satan? After intense inner struggle, Adam looked at his companion, who he had joined with in eternal promises of delivery. He would not leave her now. He would share with her the results of the rebellion. Then he took the fruit from the hand of Eve and brought it to his mouth in a hasty gesture. Looking to stifle the voice of conscience speaking to him of eternal damnation, Adam threw himself into the arms of his wife, enjoying the high price of his rebellion. Satan, with shouts of triumph, left Eden flying swiftly along to his innumerable hosts, who looked anxious as a result of the risky attempt. Upon learning of the human misery, they joined in a thunderous party. They felt secure. Zion was now theirs by right. There they could establish an eternal kingdom, never being harassed by the laws of the Eternal. Across the universe, the children of light bewailed the loss they suffered. There had never been such sadness and horror of the future. The voices that lived to sing praises to the Creator now uttered lamentations. The Eternal, overcome by infinite pain, bowed low. He was in tears from the fall of man, but he was not, however, surprised. Even before he created the universe, he had already foreseen this triumph of rebellion and, in his wisdom and love, formulated a rescue plan that would involve a huge sacrifice. Wiping the tears from his tears, he put himself to act powerfully for his faithful afflicted to prevent them from falling into enemy hands. This mysterious intervention apparently deposed against justice. The Eternal commanded his most powerful angels to immediately surround Garden of Eden, preventing Satan from taking possession of Mount Zion. Comforted before the Epiphany, the powerful creatures in ready obedience broke the infinite space and in moments circled around paradise, within which the human being, already disturbed by sin, experienced the blackness of a night that would be long and cruel. As the authority of the Eternal was founded on justice, how could he justify his actions before their enemies? Would he not relinquish the kingdom that by man's choice had fallen to Satan? Surprised, the rational creatures considered the decisive actions of Yahuwah. They then heard his powerful voice reverberating throughout creation, which brought revelation of the great mystery, so wonderful a revelation that from that moment, for all eternity, it would occupy the minds of the faithful during their sweetest meditations. The Eternal first spoke about the terrible condemnation that hung over mankind and all creation. He said that by turning off the fountain of life, the man had rushed into so deep chasm that he could not be reached by his arm of justice and power. Humiliated and tortured by the claws of the enemy, there was not left to man another chance after death. This was the result of his painful, spontaneous rebellion. Considering the human situation, the hosts of light saw possibilities of triumph. They knew that only the man could regain dominion of the enemy, returning it to the Creator. But the human being, eternally enslaved in nature, would be incapable of such a victory. With melodious voice and full of tenderness, Yahuwah revealed the plan of redemption, saying, in fact, the man will reap from their rebellion the fruit of a terrible death. I cannot with my power change your fate. If I was so to act, it would be unfair on my decree. I'll instead put all the condemnation upon a substitute that will arise in human offspring. This man will not bring in his hands the bonds of death, being innocent and undefiled in his nature. As a representative of the human race, he will face and overcome Satan. After triumph in this battle, proving that love is stronger than selfishness, that truth is stronger than lies, that humility is more powerful than pride, this faithful substitute will lift their hands not to boast victoriously of that great achievement, but to take from the hands of enslaved humanity the cup of his conviction. In gulps so submissive, he will drink the cup of eternal death. This immense sacrifice will open to human beings a chance to be redeemed, to return to the arms of the Creator along with the lost dominion. The hosts, surprised before the revelation of the Eternal, inquired about the identity of that substitute. The Creator with a loving smile told them, I will be the man. My spirit will rest upon a virgin and it will generate a holy son. This boy will be divine and human. In his humanity, he will be submissive to the divinity that dwells in him. The redeemed will see him as the everlasting Father, the Creator and Redeemer, the King of Kings. His name is Yahushua, the Eternal saves. Assuming a human nature, Yahuwah could pay the high ransom price, dying in the place of sinners. The hosts were stunned into silence to know the plan of the Creator. The thought of seeing him undergo so painful a sacrifice in order to redeem the lost dominion was too much to bear. There was, however, no other hope of victory unless through this loving delivery. After enjoying the high price of sin, the young couple felt sick. Initially, they felt a great emptiness in the heart, which was soon filled with remorse and grief. They realized that, inspired by greed, they had sealed their sad fate and the fate of all creation. It seemed to them that they could hear the distant wail of a conquered universe. The sun, which was full of life and warmth that day, lurked on the horizon, announcing to them a dark night. The afterglow, which until then had announced a happy encounter with the Creator, seemed to involve them in a sentence that would never awaken to a new day. They dared not even look up, fearing to see falling upon them the radius of judgment that would reduce the dust. With the eyes on the cold ground, there came to mind the sentence, "The day you eat thereof, you shall surely die." Desperate tears rolled down their faces as they awaited the tragic end. When considering the reason for his rebellion, Adam began to blame his wife for having listened to the serpent. Eve, in turn, trying to apologize, put the blame on the Creator, saying, "Why did the Eternal let the serpent deceive me?" The love that reigned in the human heart disappeared, giving way to pride and selfishness, which merged into resentment and hatred. His nature was no longer pure and holy, but corrupt and full of rebellion. Everything was changed. Even a gentle breeze, which hitherto had bathed them in refreshing caresses, now froze the guilty pair. Trees and flower beds, which used to be their delight, became impediments as they walked aimlessly through the night. The purpose of Satan to fill the Sabbath darkness seemed to have been fulfilled. That night, there was not even the silver moonlight to tell them of hope. The twinkling stars suspended in the dark sky were overshadowed by the pain. The darkness of a long night of sin descended over the world, shadows under which many would drag themselves towards a hopeless dawn. The night was already high, and the darkness seemed to involve the sad couple in eternal shadows. They did not speak to each other, being suffocated by the agony of a dawn. They were crestfallen, groping here and there in anticipation of impending judgment, which would reduce them to cold dust and leave them forgotten in that darkness without end. Suddenly, there appeared a glow in the sky, which increased as it approached the earth. The man trembled, for he knew that it was the Creator who came to give them the punishment. Overcome by panic, they began to run away from the Mount of Zion, the place of the shameful fool. If they looked back, they would see the Creator himself. They, who always ran to meet the loving Father, attracted by his light, now fled into the dense forest, desperate for dark places. Yahuwah, moved by infinite love, came to follow in the footsteps of the fugitive couple. As he walked, he wept as he remembered the happy times he had spent with them in that paradise, how everything had become. The children could no longer see him as a father of love, but someone who angrily sought to punish them. Moved by a strong desire to embrace his human children, Yahuwah's voice repeated a question. Adam, where are you? His voice, the sound in the darkness, was met with just a hollow echo that spoke of ingratitude and rebellion. How he wished to engage the couple in a fervent embrace, and with words of affection confessed to them that his love was the same. Seeing his children flee from his presence, the Eternal was overcome with pain. With grief and tears, he beheld the future of the human race stretched before him. How many, deceived by Satan, would flee from his presence during the long night of sin, believing Yahuwah was a tyrant who lived to seek out the flaws and weaknesses of sinners in order to punish them. The Creator, however, did not give up seeking in the dark valleys of the kingdom of death to win a repentant people. Adam and Eve, exhausted by the hurried escape, hid themselves among the foliage of a foot figure. Recognizing their nakedness, they sought to sew aprons from those leaves. Dressed so they thought they could get rid themselves of the feeling of shame before the Creator, the Eternal approached the place where the couple was hiding and asked, Adam, where are you? No longer able to hide from Yahuwah, Adam stood up along with his mate and downcast, presented themselves to the Creator, falling down, trembling at his feet. They failed to look at him more due to the sense of guilt. The Creator lovingly took them by the hands, lifting them off the ground, and with an expression of sadness in the countenance, he asked them, Why do you run away from me? Did you eat of the tree of knowledge of good and evil? Adam, trembling, his voice ragged with sobs of fear, replied, The woman whom thou gavest me, she gave me the fruit and I ate. With this answer, Adam tried to apologize, blaming it on his wife. Turning to Eve, the Eternal asked her, Why did you do that? Eve readily answered him, That serpent deceived me and I ate. Both did not want to plead guilty, flipping it over onto others. They then attributed the responsibility to the Creator for any wrongdoing. Why had he given them free will? Why had he created the woman? Why had he created the serpent? Silent, Yahuwah watched his timid and bewildered children stand before him. With deep sorrow, he predicted that this would be the experience of countless human beings throughout history. How would they get lost by not recognizing their own guilt? How would they seek to justify themselves by launching their mistakes on others and even upon the Creator? With soft words, The Eternal sought to make them acknowledge their guilt. Only by recognizing their need could they be helped. Looking at the fragile garments woven by the couple's sinful hands, he said, "Children, these garments are insufficient. When they dry, they will be dissolved. You need lasting garments that can cover your nakedness and escape the condemnation. If you want, I can give you that robe." Before the kind words of the Creator who brought hope, the couple fell sorry and undressed from their illusory robes, symbols of their failure. They longed now for the garments of salvation promised by Yahuwah the Father. The History of the Universe, Chapter 5. After contemplating his children who, repenting, lay at his feet, the Eternal took them by the hand and gently raised them. He rejoiced in being able to reveal to the fallen man the plan of redemption. With tenderness, Yahuwah began to share with them first the bitter results of their fall, saying, "Children, you have sealed the fate of all creation in the clutches of death. Disharmony now permeates nature, seeking to destroy all its virtues. The abyss into which you are immersed for disobedience is too deep to be rescued by my mighty arm. But even so, disconnected from the source of life, there still remains more to man, another chance after death." After uttering these words that revealed their sad fate, the Eternal invited the couple to follow him. Downcast, Adam and Eve in tears followed the Creator in his footsteps of justice, which were heading towards the place of the shameful fall where they supposed to find their painful end. In this painful walk, they sobbed to remember their past glory undone by ingratitude. How it hurt them in the soul, the terrible expectation of being reduced, along with all of creation, to the cold ashes in the darkness of that night of sin. As they walked, they stared through tears at the sleeping beauties bathed by the light of Yahuwah. They saw the innocent animals, who were unaware of their great pain. Suddenly the couple paused, overcome by intense wailing. Their faltering steps had led them to be with a lamb, the most beloved pet. Would his little eyes of tenderness also fade? Wiping their tears, the Eternal commanded them to take in their arms the innocent lamb. Holding it close to the chest, they accompanied the silent footsteps of the Creator to reach the top of Mount Zion, the place of the shameful fall. Contemplating there the remains of the crimson fruit, the memory of the divine sentence came with haste to their minds. "The day you eat thereof, you shall surely die." The terrible moment had come. The guilty man must drink the bitter cup of death, succumbing hopelessly. Aware of their destruction, the couple realized with horror that the hands that brought them to life were now wielding a sharp stone cleaver. Trembling, they fell down and waited for the fulfillment of the just sentence. While muted by fear, Adam and Eve waited for the blow that would reduce them to dust. Instead, they then felt the soft touch of the divine hands that rose them to a new life. The punishment, however, would fall upon a replacement. Putting the hands of Adam on the knife, the Creator said, "The lamb will die instead of you. Adam must sacrifice him." Scared against the order of Yahuwah, the couple tearfully began to cry, "Yahuwah, not the lamb, he is innocent." With an expression of justice, the Eternal said, "If he does not die, you may not have the garments of which I spoke." Before the insistence of the Creator, Adam, all trembling and with a painful effort, stabbed the lamb in the chest with that acute stone. The blow was fatal, and the little animal shedding his precious blood was plunged into the darkness of an endless night. Contemplating the lamb inert on the bloody grass, the couple raised their voices and wept. They were beginning to grasp the enormity of their tragedy. How terrible was death! Death, in its power, could erase all the light from the eyes of an innocent animal. Leaning silently on the inert body of the lamb, The Eternal took its wool-coated skin and made coats to cover the nakedness of the couple. After they put them on, he asked them fondly, "Do you understand the meaning of all this?" In deep thought, between sobs of recognition and gratitude, the couple said, "He died in our place to give us his clothes." While Adam and Eve understood that physical reality, they were far from understanding the full significance of that event. The Creator then revealed to them the mystery of divine love. With an expression of infinite mercy, Yahuwah went on to reveal to the human the sense of that sacrifice, saying, "The innocent lamb that suffered today symbolizes a man who will be born. In his eyes will be the same gentleness, the same love. Coated by a righteous life as wool covering the lamb, this man will grow as a branch on earth, not having on his hands the shackles of sin. In its appearance this man will not bring the pomp of a king, so he will be despised by many. He will be a man of sorrows, because on him will fall the weight of all the trials. In fidelity to the kingdom of light, this man will fight the enemy usurper, finally defeating it. After triumphing in his struggles, he will take upon himself the burden of your condemnation that will cause a horrible death. He will be pierced because of your transgressions and bruised for your iniquities. He will be oppressed and afflicted, yet will not open his mouth, as the lamb today surrendered peacefully. Succumbing in death, he will grant you the merits of his victory. Involved in his robes of righteousness, you will be free of condemnation. Eternal life will triumph through the sacrifice of that righteous man who will be born. Adam and Eve, with a mixture of gratitude and pain, heard the revelation of so great a salvation, reverently inquired about that special man in their offspring who would arise in order to accomplish such an immense sacrifice. The Creator, watching them tenderly, moved by a love that overcomes even death, wrapped them in a loving embrace and revealed, "I will be the man." Surprised before the declaration of the Eternal, Adam and Eve were motionless while contemplating his gentle countenance. Understanding the meaning of the tremendous sacrifice, they fell at his feet with tears and cried, "We are deserving of death, Yahuwah, but thou art innocent and must not suffer in our place." Wiping their tears, the Eternal tenderly told them, "My children, I love you with an everlasting love. I will die instead of you." Before this confirmation, the couple raised their voice in painful lamentation and said, "We killed the Creator. We killed the Creator." But Yahuwah comforted the couple with words of hope, saying, "After sipping the cup of eternal death, I shall return to life and ascend to heaven. There I will intercede for the lost man, giving all those who repent and accept my sacrifice the garments of my victory. Together we will triumph finally over the kingdom of sin that will be overthrown like ashes under our feet. Then I will create a new heaven and a new earth where righteousness alone and love reign. We will live on forever in a kingdom of perfect peace and harmony." The Creator, still accompanying the couple there on Mount Zion, concluded his revelations by saying, "The Garden of Eden will now be empty. Humans, during the long night of sin, will wander in exile. They will not, however, walk alone. The Eternal, also a pilgrim, will tread with the man across the thorny road until they together climb the hill that was lost, triumphing gloriously over the realm of death. The tree of knowledge of good and evil, that monument of defiance, will then be undone, giving way to a glorious tree that will unite its canopy to the tree of life and become an arch commemorating the great victory. So shall the faithful rest forever, redeemed upon the holy mountain that will be triumphantly named, the throne of Yahuwah and of the Lamb." Adam and his companion, after hearing words so comforting and hopeful, raised their voices in a song of gratitude and praise. Now they knew the infinite love of their Creator and were willing to serve him. After consoling the couple, Yahuwah took them out of Eden. It was not easy to say goodbye to that precious home. There they had awakened to life in the arms of the Eternal, and there they had enjoyed moments of pure happiness in the company of the Creator, angels, and docile animals. An infinite longing seemed to involve the couple in their footsteps of abandonment. Astonished, Satan and his subjects witnessed the intervention of the Eternal. They were shaken before the startling revelation of the rescue plan. With angry frustration, they realized that if indeed the divine promise came to fruition, there would not be any hope for them. After reflecting on all that had happened, a great anger came over Satan's heart. He was unwilling to recognize the redemption of mankind. He would make every effort to maintain his control over mankind along with the kingdom given to him. When the wounded couple, accompanied by their Creator, reached the valley of death, it was already dawn. There, Satan confronted them angrily in an attempt to hold back the human being. The couple was trembling in the face of the enemy, but the protective hands of Yahuwah calmed them down. With his countenance expressing the firmness of a justice that is eternal, the Eternal silenced the enemy's threats with the following words: "The human being belongs to me because I bought them with my blood." Silent as they walked along the Creator, Adam and Eve watched with sadness the signs of death in that nature that was once so full of life. The beautiful flowers that had blossomed to exhale eternal aromas hung withered now. The birds, which hailed with joy in each dawn with their trills, flew far away, so sad their songs sounded. Everything was changed in nature. The knowledge of good and evil did not bring any good to the universe, but an intense spiritual and physical conflict. Fully realizing the devastating consequences of their fall, the couple was overcome by unutterable sadness, and they lay prostrate, repentant, and wept bitterly. Yahuwah, who was also sad for their pain in contemplating their bleak scenario, sought with words of hope to comfort them. He told them about the new heaven and the new earth that one day would come, where peace and love would return to reign in every heart, where they would live always together, not bringing upon the forehead the marks of sorrow, but crowns of eternal victory. There he would wipe away the tears from their faces, and they would never return to moisten their eyes. Bolstering Adam and Eve in their footsteps, the Creator led them through a wounded valley until they reached the foot of a hill. They climbed it in slow steps as they exchanged words of encouragement and hope. His feet finally reached the soft grass that covered the top of that spacious hill. It was about that place that the couple saw every day the sunset, bathing the sky and valleys in bright red like the blood that gushed from the breast of the Lamb. Turning to the eastern side, the couple, in a mixture of pain and longing, gazed at the landscape far in the past, where they had been so happy. Looking to Mount Zion, which stood majestic in the middle of Eden, they cried, remembering the fall, how weak they were. The sun was declining in its journey, announcing the arrival of a sad night, the first outside of paradise. With a quiet gesture, the Eternal showed them to the hill overlooking the valley and told them fondly, "Here is your temporary abode. Here you can behold paradise that for some time will remain on earth until it is returned to its place of origin within the heavenly Jerusalem. There, protected by justice, it will await the dawn of victory. When that big day comes, we will return together to Zion, where we will be crowned in glory, in a kingdom of eternal happiness and peace." After saying these words, Yahuwah ordered the couple to build an altar of stone on which each week, the night before the Sabbath, they should sacrifice a lamb in memory of his sacrifice. As a sign of his presence, and to make sure that their sins would be forgiven, He would kindle a fire on the altar, which would last all night until it utterly consumed the sacrificial offering, so that humans could establish their faith in the truths revealed and not in the visible manifestation of the person of the Creator. He would remain invisible from that moment on. Yahuwah told them with love, "Children, though you have to stay in this hostile environment, you need not fear, for I will stay beside you. I will be a friend and companion on this journey. I will take upon my shoulders your pain, your desires, your struggles. When tempted by the enemy, and you are about to give in, you can find shelter in my arms. It will always be extended to save you. If ever you do not resist, and the fury of the enemy drags you to the depths of the abyss, do not despair, thinking there is no hope, because I'll be there with my forgiveness and strength. Always have in mind the significance of the garments you received from my hands, for they speak of the redemption that belongs to man. Rest, my children, in my arms of love." After consoling the couple with these promises, the Creator, seeing that they were sleepy by fatigue, made them lay in his lap, and as usual, stroked them gently until they fell asleep. When seeing them in their sleep, Yahuwah cried to predict the suffering they would experience upon waking. Heartbroken by that pain caused by physical separation, the Creator left the couple asleep on the grass, after kissing their faces already marked in suffering. His light dissipated by becoming invisible, giving way to the darkness of that first night out of paradise. Subconsciously, the couple began parading colorful dreams of a happy past, where once again they were among the beauties of Eden and satiated by an eternal joy. Grateful for life, they ran in the flower fields playing with the animals. With happiness they united with voices of angels in harmonious songs in praise of the Creator. So many beautiful scenes paraded through their subconscious, but those dreams became nightmares, making them relive their tragedy. Agonizing, they awoke in the darkness of that first night in exile. Unable to sleep, the couple remained in tears, only to be comforted by the dawn that revealed to them the distant longing paradise. Yahuwah, though invisible, stood next to Adam and Eve there on the hill. Their suffering was his suffering, but he also had the hope of one day returning to Zion victorious. The bleak future of humanity was revealed before the contemplative gaze of the Creator. Regretfully, countless creatures would perish without salvation by rejecting his love. Tears wet his face in anticipating the enemy employing every cunning to retain humans under his control. Long was the night of sin and fierce the battle to regain the lost kingdom. It would require the triumph of light from the immense sacrifice of Yahuwah. In the person of the Messiah in time, he would be born among men with the mission to pay the ransom price. Through him, many would be freed from the clutches of the enemy, those who accept him as Savior and King against those choosing to enlist all the enemy forces trying to make them fall. In his vision of the future, the Creator beheld with joy the final triumph of the redeemed. They had been greatly tried, but all were more than conquerors through him who redeemed them from darkness to the kingdom of light. Foreseeing the sufferings that would come from the big fight, the Eternal extended his view across the plains, contemplating the rebel armies held captive, but willing to fight. The intent of these armies was to gain hold again of the human upon whom was sealed the right to rule over the universe. Contrary to the nature of the Creator is war, but for the defense of his children, he was willing to use his power. His strength, however, would only be employed with justice. If humans refused the protection offered by the sacrifice of the Messiah, Yahuwah could do nothing to prevent them from perishing in the claws of the enemy. Adam and Eve had repented of their great sin, receiving the mercy of Yahuwah's garments of salvation that were symbolized by the skins of the sacrificial lamb. Justified by delivery of the couple, the Eternal called his mighty armies to battle. The prompt obedience in the hosts of light broke through outer space towards Earth and created a strong wall surrounding the hill, supporting that treasure redeemed by the blood of the Heavenly King, 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 the Heavenly